Hello, you're very welcome to the week that really was with John McGurk and Sarah Ryan, where it is the 5th of May, and it is Coronation Eve. We're going to talk about lots of things. We're mainly going to talk about hate speech, let's be honest, this week. But first of all, I wanted to ask Sarah her views on the once-in-a-lifetime event that'll be happening tomorrow. I will be tuning in. I have the bunting up. I ordered a Royal Standard, but it hasn't arrived yet. Sarah, how will you be marking the great day?
Are you serious? You actually
No,
ordered one thing?
I'm joking. I'm joking. It sort of fits with the image. I get called a West Brit all the time, so I kind of lean into it. But I
Yeah,
will
yeah,
be watching.
you embrace it, do you?
Yes.
I don't know if I will be watching it. Keith's away for the weekend, so I'll be solo parenting. My sister might help me, so I don't think I will have time to watch it. But I'm more fascinated. This is so nerdy, right? But um, in my family, my grandmother was really into she always used to make Coronation Chicken. Have you ever? So
Yes.
there's a so the recipe, the chicken recipe from the Queen's coronation, has
Hmm.
kind of cult status. So I was really fascinated at seeing what the coronation recipe was going to be, and it's quiche apparently. But then they announced three official recipes for his coronation chicken, or for his coronation chicken for his coronation, and it's like it's a quiche with a big lunch, and then it's like a Ken Ham rack of lamb with an Asian marinade and something else, Coronation aubergine, and then um
Coronation
what
aubergine.
Coronation aubergine, and then Adam Handling strawberry and ginger trifle. So there
Okay.
you go. So I'm really into cooking, so I was really excited to see what the coronation recipes are. I'm not planning on making any of them, but um I'll probably dip in and out. I'm a bit of a royalist in that I love a bit of the drama, so I'll be keen. I'll be interested to see Harry's brief is it an hour, 2 hour visit?
Yes. And he'll look out of
Uh,
place because he'll be in a suit and the rest of them will be in uniform. And
oh
apparently
God.
they put him 7 or 8 rows back. So yeah, it'll be all very interesting to see. The world will be watching to see if his father says hello to him, or vice versa. So that'll be
Uh,
fascinating. It's interesting you mentioned Coronation Chicken. That was chosen, of course, because the coronation was just after the war. Britain was still under, I know it was 1953 or whatever it was, but Britain was still actually under rationing at that time. Everyone was poor, and Coronation Chicken was chosen because chicken was cheap and widely available, and everyone could make it. So that was the reason it was chosen. Um,
but I
uh,
love the way it's kind of multicultural. So it's curry powder. Coronation chicken is like chicken, peaches, chutney, curry powder, I think. And it's lovely, but I love the way there's a kind of a meaning behind them. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Um, I'm a big believer that food just brings people together, John, you know? So
Brings me to the
so
table too often. Anyway, I'll be watching. I'll be watching it purely on the basis that it's a twice in a lifetime event. It's not a once in a lifetime event because let's face it, you and I will probably live to see the next king as well. But I'm not sure, given how long that family live, that that either of us will be around for the coronation of George the 7th. So it's probably a
probably not.
twice. It's probably a twice in a lifetime event. So I'll tune into it without any
What
embarrassment
age?
or
What
anything.
age is Charles?
He's 74, 75 this year. And William is, I think, he's basically the same age as us, 1983, 1984, something like that. He was born. I mean, I'm betting he'll probably live longer than me. Women live longer than men, so maybe you'll be around in your old age to see the little prince become
And I'll
king.
think
But
of you, John.
you
I'll
will. You'll
think of
think
you.
of me. You'll think of me. So John would have loved this. He loved a good coronation.
You
Anyway,
loved the ch
anyway, the hate speech bill has dominated the news this week. Let's talk about that because well, actually, it hasn't dominated the news. That's, I suppose, the point. There's been basically no
Dominated,
coverage
it's
of it
dominated the
anywhere.
news outside of Ireland. Everyone outside of Ireland is talking about it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I thought it was funny. I tweeted last week that, you know, the problem with Ireland is that if Jordan Peterson, Donald Trump Jr., and Elon Musk are saying something is bad, that's basically all the establishment need to say, well, it must be good. And lo and behold, yesterday, the Irish Independent published a headline which literally said, Donald Trump Jr., Elon Musk, and Jordan Peterson are
Yeah, I
against the
saw
hate
it.
speech bill. Therefore, let's go for it, lads. And that's it. That's the sum total of the analysis that's been done in the mainstream Irish media, which is just astonishing when you consider how
Uh,
radical it is.
well, There's so much to this. So, first of all, I know exactly the article you're referring to. And yesterday when Keith came home from work, he said, I read this article today and I really thought it was a joke at the beginning and I thought it was parody. And I said, oh, is it the article about Donald Trump? And what was even more depressing was that it wasn't. It was another article that was about banning cars or something that he's furious about. So we both read articles that day that we both thought were not real, but in fact were, because that's the Ireland we live in now. But I mean, I think like there's so many elements to this. So Ben Scanlon from Gript did such a good job on breaking down all of the responses, and then he asked Leo public responses, sorry, to the public consultation, and then he asked Leo, and Leo's answer to that was more depressing, to be honest, to me than anything else, which is basically like, well, when we sometimes when we don't like the answer, I'm paraphrasing, sometimes we don't get the answers we like, and yeah, we're just going to ignore that. And like, as Ben asked, why bother doing public consultations if you're going to ignore the response? Second of all, why do we spend so much money on doing citizens' assemblies then? So what you're saying is, I mean, they're not even trying to hide it anymore. It's just, this is the agenda, this is what we're doing, and like it or not, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Well,
and I find that to be really, like, not even just depressing, John, but like kind of scary. Like, Leo's saying, oh, well, the government is elected and we are elected to make decisions or whatever. But then why are you having citizens' assemblies? Because when you come to scary topics that you don't want to actually come up with answers on, you leave it to the public. But you're even admitting that if the public don't give you answers you like, you just ignore it anyway. So, like, why bother? And why bother? Why should anybody bother ever making a submission on any issue to the government ever?
It's astonishing. Well, first of all, a few background points. You mentioned Ben going through the responses there, and I have to say Ben gets all the credit for that, because I actually told him, I don't know why you're doing that, because it took so long. I mean, there was 3,700 out of them. He told me on, I think, Wednesday he was going to start reading through them, and he'd done the first 200 or something, and it had taken him an hour. And I was like, Ben, you just don't have that kind of time. We'll take a random sample of them or something. But no, he went through every single one, and he came up with the figure that 71% were against. Which I think there's another point to this story which isn't being mentioned, which is that the government itself is actually using those responses to legitimize their bill. So the Department of Justice put out a tweet a couple of months ago saying there is now hate speech legislation being drafted on foot of the amazing engagement in the public consultation, 3,600 responses. And like, obviously they didn't explicitly say the responses were in favor of the bill, but they gave that impression. They deliberately gave that impression that, we have all these responses, now we're drafting legislation, therefore our actions have democratic legitimacy. But they knew the responses that they got were overwhelmingly opposed. The responses in favor, by the way, I viewed a small sample of them, are almost all from institutions. So independent newspapers have a response in calling for a hate speech legislation, as long as the journalists are exempt. Hate speech for everyone else, but not for us. So that's literally what their submission says. Every NGO submission in calling for hate speech. I mean, and the fact is that in Irish society, there are people who get listened to and there are people who don't. And it was interesting to see Leo say yesterday that sometimes there are campaigns organized, but there was no campaign organized to submit negative responses to the hate speech bill. Nobody organized that kind of campaign. But
sorry, but also sometimes campaigns are organized. So what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so what if a group of people organize a campaign? Like, that's like saying, do you know what I mean? Like, there's loads of campaigns organized to raise awareness about this or that. That's a nonsense. Vegans have a campaign at the moment where there's, billboards of whatever. You don't go, oh, well, more people are becoming vegans because of that campaign. It's terrible. Like, so what if people organize campaigns? He's so far adrift at sea that now campaigning is a bad thing if it affects the way people think, like, or people thinking in a way he doesn't like.
Yeah.
God almighty.
I mean, there's the other facts here as well. Just this is not the only issue on which this kind of run around legitimacy is being done. I mean, the other big one at the moment is the sex education reform that is currently sitting on Norma Foley's desk, where there was an extensive public consultation done. Now, we have not got the full figures on what the breakdown of those were. We will get them, but I am almost certain that there was an overwhelming majority against what the government wanted to do, and it's going to be done anyway.
I would bet serious money that that's exactly correct.
And by the way, I think you'll find a lot of the responses to that were from parents, not random members of the public, people with genuine concerns about what's being taught in their kids' school, and they will be run roughshod over because
proper hard right wing, transphobes, John.
And the irony, the
alt right, alt right.
The irony here, of course, is that all the NGOs that the government do listen to are publicly funded by the taxpayer on the basis that they represent the public. This is the three-card trick. We fund the Irish Council for Civil Liberties to defend the liberties of the public and to advocate for the rights for the civil rights of the public who desire that kind of advocacy. That's the theory. And then the ICCL, and I'm using them as an example, go in on issue after issue, hate speech being one. For example, there was the issue with abortion protests in public areas where there's a right to free speech, where the ICCL is like, ban them. They go in and advocate expressly against the thing that they're in theory in favor of. Their purpose is to defend, while the actual public are ignored. It is an end run around democratic legitimacy in the democratic process, and
the National Women's Council will have a biological male speaking. So what was the purpose of the National Women's Council? Was it to represent women? Do you know what I mean?
Farce. And the thing is, people are slowly, painfully slowly waking up to it. But it's such a slow process. But eventually there's going to be a reckoning for this, because it can't continue. You can't continue to have essentially the country run by a self-serving little state-funded clique of politicians, journalists, and NGOs. And that's
why, like, there's such a space. Like, I go about my life and I meet different people, and I have never, that wasn't politically affiliated, I have never met a parent who was in favor of anything being taught to their kids, and people more actively talking about it. I went to Madrid a couple of weeks ago for the weekend. I ended up sitting beside this guy on the plane who's such a nice guy, and he had 3 kids, and we were chatting away. He was going to Madrid with his friends, and it was like this. It's in every conversation you have with people, there's this moment where I can tell he's trying to suss out if I'm going to be receptive to him going on a rant about all of this stuff. And so I say I say the password. I can't remember what I said. And then he's like, oh yeah, deadly. And then he just goes for it. And he's like, don't want this in my kids' skills. I don't want this. And every single person is like, I'll be polite to anybody. I'll be nice to anybody. I'll call anybody whatever they want. But this is an overreach, whatever. Like, it is everywhere. These, like, people are not, this is not representative of the public. And the parties are going to find that out when they go to the next election. And I wish that Fianna Fáil would get rid of Micheál Martin and have somebody like, Barry Cowan or somebody just be the new leader and come out and say, listen, we're not getting involved in any more of this nonsense. Here's a list of NGOs that we're immediately disbanding. This is my this is my political fantasy. What a nerd. This is a list of the NGOs we're disbanding tomorrow. We're not getting involved in any more of this nonsense. You're gone. You're gone. You're gone. Like, just, whatever. And it's never going to happen. But one can dream, John. One can dream. And I just think that in my adult life, I don't have a memory of there being such a disparity between the narrative that we hear from the media and the public, the elected representatives, and what people actually believe. I know the Emperor's New Clothes thing analogy or example is so overused, but it's true. And it's that people are waking up. That's why, media like Gript and The Ditch and all, people are starting to pay more attention to it, because like they're waking up to the fact that they're being sold a pup on a lot of these social issues, and they're not in the minority, they're in the silent majority.
You made a very, very funny point there, which I want to expand on, because I think it's so true, which is the password. The fact that, and it's a middle class thing, because I've made the observation on this podcast before that, like, on issues like immigration, where we've had protests or people challenging the regime, it has generally been, and I say this with no disrespect, but it has generally been from working class communities who don't really feel like they've much to lose anyway, who can come out and say, no, you're not putting this in our area. Whereas middle class people They have jobs. They're terrified. They're very careful of what they say to other middle class people in case the one person they say the wrong thing to the wrong person and they're reported to human resources, or there's sort of, I can't believe this was said. There's a culture of fear there. So there's this
Yeah.
constant feeling. I experience it in my life. Well, not so much if people don't know who I am. I experience the sort of feeling out. Whereas other times, like the most common reaction I get when I meet people who I don't know, who know who I am, is just thank you for saying it because we can't.
Yeah.
And that's an astonishing reflection of the society we live in. There is this terrible fear. People on the left tend to mock conservatives for saying that they're silenced and say, "Oh, David Quinn has a column in the newspaper, and Eilish O'Hanlon has a column, and these people are always on TV." Yeah, I mean, those of us who are sort of professional talkers do. But what we mean is that the average middle class, normal Irish person who thinks a lot of this stuff is absolute nonsense keeps their mouth shut for fear of consequences in their personal and professional lives, and their silence is then taken for assent as proof of
Yeah.
their assent. It is
Yeah.
there's sort of a reign of terror is too strong a term, but there's a reign of fear
Yeah.
in Irish society. And the hate speech bill is deliberately designed to add to it. That's the point. It's deliberately designed to add to that fear, to make you careful about saying almost anything about the transgender stuff, immigration, religion, any topic, travelers, any topic that's off limits. It's to make you afraid of saying almost anything for fear of being prosecuted. And I mean, those pushing it are open about that. They're open about that. It's to tackle racism in inverted commas. In other words, to shut you up. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. Did you see the thing during the week where, actually, speaking of tackling racism, Joe O'Brien, the Green Minister, I believe is in your constituency, said that they were having trouble getting accommodation for refugees because providers and communities were racist.
No, I didn't see that. Oh
Well,
no, maybe I won't vote for him again. Oh wait. Oh wait. In a million billion years would I vote for him. So no fear. Like, also, that's what the public love, by the way, is to be called names. Like, I just patronized to and told, that we're called names when we don't do what you want. That's the trick. It's like it used to be, oh, like, oh, you're right wing, you're alt right, you're this, you're that, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, you hate women, you're anti women, like, whatever. And I think those things are stopping working. I said that to you a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think it speaks to I think Joe O'Brien's comments, for me, they spoke to the extremism that is sort of taken hold in the governing class. Because if you look at it objectively, Ireland has taken in, I think, 100,000 Ukrainians. And then in the last year, I think something like 20,000 international protection applicants, which is the new word for asylum seekers, new politically correct word, 20,000 asylum seekers, essentially. Taking them in almost without complaint. I mean, yeah, there were the East Wall protests, and there have been, but those issues have mainly been about this area isn't suitable, rather than the whole immigration policy has to stop. And then to have taken in essentially 120,000 extra people in a year with very little, by the way, political complaint, no massive political breakthrough for a hard right anti-immigrant party, and then still to have a member of the government saying the Irish public are racist. What do the Irish public have to do to redeem themselves in the eyes of those who rule us? Because I wrote a piece last year that did very well, where I said that basically the government and the people running this country really do think the worst of the people living in it. We're all racist, we're all bigots, we're all sexists, we're all homophobes. If you're a man, you're a danger to every woman in the country. If you're a white middle class man, you're privileged and probably a sexist. If you are in any way concerned about anything happening in your local area, you're probably a racist or a bigot. It is constantly, the accusations are thrown at the public by the politicians, as if we all have to be better to live up to their grand expectations. That is the attitude. And I don't know when people are going to get sick of it. But I think they will at some point.
I think they are. Like, I think that, we're seeing a sea change, definitely, in people. And it's because of this overreaching, and people just get tired of being called names. And, like also, by the way, I think that, like, I was listening to a thing on the radio the other day about, I haven't seen it myself, but apparently on Mount Street there's loads of tents outside the asylum, one of the department offices for
Yeah,
people who are seeking asylum.
the International Protection Office, I think.
That's it. And like I was thinking to myself, is there not a form of like human rights? Like if you are allowing into Ireland people who are now homeless on the street because you want to be the best boy in the class or something, what about the like humanity of those people? Like you
Yeah,
are not capable of housing these people. You should stop what you're doing, because I don't think it's right to allow somebody asylum in Ireland like that to live on the road.
well,
Like,
it's worse than that, because did you see what happened in Cahersiveen this week? You probably didn't. Um,
remind me.
so basically, the background to this is that last year, the I think it was the Skellig Star Hotel in Cahersiveen was turned into a reception center for Ukrainian mothers and children, and there are about
Mhm.
100 Ukrainian, and they are mothers and children living in the hotel. And they have integrated really well into the community. The community broke their backs to provide language lessons, get people into schools, teach the kids. A lot, I think, the majority of the women in the hotel are working in the local community. The kids are in schools there. Some of them are playing GAA, and they're living out of the Skellig Star Hotel. So last weekend was a bank holiday weekend, and on the Friday evening before the bank holiday, the Department of Children announced that all of those Ukrainians were being uprooted and moved to Tralee, to a new facility. School's
Oh, I
gone,
did see
jobs
this.
gone, the whole lot, so that the hotel could be used instead to accommodate the aforementioned asylum seekers or slash international protection applicants. And the community was outraged, not because of the change, but because what kind of a way is this to treat people? You say you're compassionate. You bring people into a country, they get jobs, their kids go to schools, their kids make friends, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden you were just going to overnight on a Friday night of bank holiday weekend say your lives are changing entirely again on Tuesday morning. It's an
And it,
outrageous way to treat people. Let alone leave every other consideration aside. What kind of a government treats people that way? It's astonishing. And then the rest of us are racist. Come on.
yeah.
Anyway, they backtracked. They backtracked after basically the locals wouldn't wear it. But the other element to that, of course, was that the hotel was originally designated for Ukrainian women and children, and that's why the community opened their arms to it. And I'm not saying the community were protesting on this basis, but there was obviously a little bit of a bait and switch happening there, whereby a year later, the people you wanted to come were being moved out. And by the way, we're going to put in a load of young male asylum seekers while we move the Ukrainians to Tralee to tell the people of Tralee that the hotel they're opening there is just going to be for Ukrainian mothers and children. So, like, it's treating people like pawns on a chessboard.
But is that not also the kind of like a microcosm of like what's wrong with the way Ireland is run, or the mistake that we make all the time, which is there's a system now that seems to be working quite well on its own. Let's mess with that. Like they seem to have integrated well. It seems to have worked. Everybody's happy. No, I think we should mess around with that. See what we can do. Like, do you know what I mean? It was working fine. Leave it alone. Just leave it alone. No.
Yeah. So that's where we're at on that. And so to talk about the hate speech bill itself a little bit, because the media aren't talking about it. It's got these provisions in it, which I find extraordinary. So one of them is that the government can now send you to jail if you don't give them the password to your phone, on the basis that they suspect that you might have hateful material on your phone. Now, what hateful material is, who knows? That's a subjective test. It's up to whoever finds it to decide whether it's hateful. So I might have something on my phone that you wouldn't find hateful, Sarah, but a policeman or a Garda can come, ask me for my phone, demand the password, and if I don't give it, I go to jail. And he finds something that he thinks is offensive, and lo and behold, I'm in jail. That's literally the law now, which you're a barrister, I'm not, but that seems to me to be very problematic in terms of our traditional understanding of civil liberties in this country.
Well, I know a lot of wives out there who would have loved a law that sent their husbands to jail for not giving their phone passwords to them. But like, that's besides the point. The most important thing from a legal point of view is that there is no definition of what hate means. So in most law, like you'd have, like, say you have burglary or trespass or murder or assault. There's a clear definition of what that is. Do you know what I mean? So when you fail to define what hate is, it could be anything. And that like whatever about being able to be sent to jail because you won't give your password. Like, I don't think that anybody would like. So let's just pretend that if you're strongly like if you're strongly suspected of having child rape imagery on your phone and you won't hand over your password, I don't think, and you could be sent to jail for that. Okay, fine, maybe people could get behind that, but because you might have something hateful on your phone, it's just so unbelievably vague that it's 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 George Orwell stuff.
And
Like
how is
it's
that defined? I mean, if you sent me a WhatsApp with for the benefit of the lawyers, Sarah would never send me such a WhatsApp. But if you send me a WhatsApp that has, I don't know, a sort of an edgy joke in it about some, in inverted commas, protected group, am I responsible if the Gardaí open my phone and find that there's an image on WhatsApp from that somebody sent me, but it's on my
well,
phone, so I possess it? Am I criminally liable for that because I might have wanted to disseminate?
that's a good question, isn't it? And what I find really ironic about that is that there are people, and I'm not going to name any names, but there are people who are in government right now who've been exposed for sending inappropriate text messages in the past. So they're
Mhm.
writing laws that would, if they were retrospective, put them in jail. Like it's absurd,
Well,
completely
let's
absurd.
just back up the truck. They're not writing any laws. They didn't write this. Most of them, I guarantee you haven't read it.
Yeah,
I
that's true.
guarantee you most of them haven't read it. I guarantee you ask. I guarantee you that if you ask, just pick a Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael TD's name out of a hat from the backbenches, ask them what does the hate speech bill say? What are the provisions in it? They will tell you they have to get back to you. I mean, they've all voted it through, but I mean, have they read it? No.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's
It's
just
like Bart. Do you remember that episode of Bart Simpson when he's asked a question and he's like, "Did you do your homework or whatever?" And it's like, provided this won't be followed by any follow-up questions. Yes, yes, I did. Like, of course they didn't read it. You're absolutely right. But the point is, as we know, what hate is, because it's not defined, it might be different. Who could have ever possibly imagined, John, 10 or 15 years ago, that me saying a biological born man is a man might be hateful. You can't possibly you can't possibly know what somebody might consider to be hateful 10 years from now.
Mhm.
So it's completely absurd, and Jordan Peterson and people like that they're right, like that it's this weird slippery slope. Nobody wants it, it's not required, and it will lead, by the way, as well, clog up courts with nonsense, absolute nonsense. Like, there are people out there who cloak themselves in their victimhood, who are dying to be offended, who want to be their feelings to be hurt, who think that everyone hates everything everyone that says that doesn't agree with them is hateful, who'll be suing people or having people charged left, right, and centre,
Yeah, because
clogging up our courts with nonsense.
the Gardaí have to investigate a formal complaint of a crime that's made. If you go in and you formally complain about a crime, they have to investigate. So if somebody goes into the Gardaí to complain about something I said on this podcast, and I would be, I'd only be mildly surprised if that doesn't happen at some stage.
Yeah.
The Gardaí are duty bound to come and interview me and waste their time and mine. And who knows? You might get the wrong. I mean, I suspect because I know a lot of rural Gardaí. I suspect a lot of Gardaí will just think this is nonsense, but they are duty
But
bound to investigate.
like if I'm on Twitter when this becomes law and somebody says, "Oh, you're just a right wing fat cow," I can now file a complaint against that person. That is nonsense, because I presume fat would be considered hateful, right?
Well, this poses another question as well. I mean, well, I don't know if fat is a protected characteristic. If it is, I shall be suing left, right, and centre. I'll be making complaints all the time. But I think this poses another problem with the law, which is: do we really think Elon Musk is going to hand over the genuine names behind anonymous Twitter accounts that abuse
No.
people? No, he's not. And if he is, he'll drag it through
Chris
the
Chris
courts.
Andrews would be quaking in his boots.
For those who don't know, you should Google Chris Andrews.
Google that. Google
Anyway, yeah. So the law is a mess. There's been no scrutiny of it. 14 TDs voted against it. Everyone else voted in favor of it. Same old story. Most of the most of the submissions were against it, and the Taoiseach says none of that matters because the government makes the decisions and they're doing this anyway. So that's the country we live in.
And the only person who subjected that to any journalistic rigor was Ben. Fair play to him. Thanks,
Yep.
Ben.
I'll pass that on. But yeah, Ben is great. If you're listening to that, Ben, I do praise you sometimes. Ben, because I'm quite harsh on Ben behind the scenes sometimes, and I feel bad about it because he's brilliant. So I'll put that on the record here. Okay. Speaking of hate speech, what was the badge during the week that we were wondering was hate speech promoted by a Labour councillor? Was it
baby killing pronoun wanker?
Okay,
that's what it says.
So this is a badge that's been designed by the Labour Party's local area rep for Sligo Leitrim, that famous Labour Party stronghold. And she's distributing. He's got the rainbow flags on it, and it says that's all it says, right? It's just you wear this badge and you identify yourself as a baby killing pronoun wanker. Is that supposed to be funny or something?
I don't know. Future alderman there, I'd say. I think it's deliberately, it's trying to get attention or whatever, but it's just crass and,
But you say something interesting there because you're right. It's deliberately trying to get attention, and it's deliberately trying to get attention by being offensive and by presumably offending people. So there are people out there, obviously, who would find both the language and the descriptions and the words in. I mean, baby killing, that's an offensive idea. It's so you're deliberately trying to get attention by being offensive. I mean, what is the difference between that and some idiot posting on Twitter about the Jews? I mean, it's provocative, hateful speech, right? So will she be prosecuted? I mean, she won't be prosecuted just for the avoidance of doubt because the law hasn't passed yet and you can't prosecute laws retroactively. But in theory, would that be hate speech? I don't think it would be because I think I don't think the law is being designed for people like that. I think it's being designed for people like you and me. I'd be very surprised if there was a rush to prosecute Labour people for making sort of anti-Catholic, very offensively pro-choice statements. But it really just shows I think it shows the caliber of the political class and those who are sort of what one might term the intellectual powerhouse behind how the country is run. That this is the kind of thing that gets applauded, or if it can't be applauded, then sort of quietly ignored, while all the political attention in the country is focused on some poor clown who holds up a anti-immigration sign at a protest.
Yeah. I mean, I think she's referring to herself, so probably not hate speech or whatever. But I think that I think this person who's wearing these badges think that they loom larger in the minds of other people than they actually do. I think it's I mean, to be honest, I'm not a Labour Party supporter. I'm not ever going to be.
I'd never guessed.
But I don't know where.
I've seen you voting for Ivana Bacik.
Hot off the press. Hot off the press. No. But I think that the Labour Party should be ashamed of that badge just on the basis that it's crass and gross and stupid and not what politics should be about. Bad language, bad spirited, just the whole thing is a nonsense. And it's somebody who, features heavily as the main character in their own mind and isn't really living rent-free in anyone else's mind. And best of luck in the election. But I don't think people like that kind of thing, and I think it's just attention seeking. And it's the same thing over and over again. You won the referendums, you won the repeal referendum, whatever. And now it's baby killing pronoun. What about having a debate or a conversation about the pronoun issue? If you're planning on running for office and you're going to knock on doors, I guarantee you people are going to ask you about it. You're wearing that badge. I don't know. I just think that the way there's people who collect election memorabilia and badges and different things from over the years, and they'll probably be trying to get their hands on this, and in the future it'll be looked at as a sad, lowbrow time in Irish politics where that was considered to be worthy of I mean, she's produced loads of them. I'd love to know how many people are actually going to wear that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just do better, and like raise the bar a bit. It's just a bit like beneath us. That's what it is. It should be beneath. It should be beneath the Labour Party.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even countercultural, because sometimes you get sort of countercultural, sort of rebellious ideas, like, people who, as we were talking a few minutes ago about the labels like far right and so on. Like, there are people who will now sort of ironically say, yeah, I'm a far right lunatic, but that makes a point, because it's countercultural. It is explicitly saying, this narrative is nonsensical. It is in the words that's often used in comedy, it's punching up rather than punching down.
Yeah.
This is just crass punching down stuff. Anyway, as I say, the prospects for the Labour Party in Sligo Leitrim, I don't think are great, and I don't think they were improved this week.
But also, just to finish, like, I didn't vote to repeal, and I didn't like it. But the repeal jumpers, for example, were very clever. Do you know what I mean? It was a very simple type, whatever font on black, white on black. I don't like it. It wasn't my view, but they were clever. We've gone from that to this, so like that'll tell you what you need to know about that. We've gone from these badges. This is supposed to be kind of cute and funny and hip and with it. But I didn't like the repeal jumpers, but we've slid a long way down the toilet with this. That's my view. Do better.
I want to finish up, because as we've been recording this, I see Sarah McInerney is the latest RTE star to announce her departure from the race to become the next Late Late Show host, along with Claire Byrne, who's now out, and Miriam O'Callaghan, who's now out. I think they're in a bit of trouble there, Sarah. I really think they don't have anyone obvious to replace Ryan Tubridy. I mean, all of their so-called leading candidates are on their way out. And the lady Katrina Perry, who presents the 6-1 News, announced her departure from RTE this week to head off to Washington to work for the BBC. So I know we didn't talk about this before the show, so you're not really prepared to talk about it, but it's just because it's happening sort of live as we're talking. They're in a bit of trouble there, aren't they?
Yeah, I like Sarah McInerney. I think that she's really bright, and I think that she's a hard interviewer and she does a good job at it. I'm not sure that translates necessarily into a talk show host, because I think she's hard news, and I think she's right to stay there because she's very good at it. I don't believe that it automatically should be a woman. Like, I think that sometimes I think that the moment doesn't make the man, if you know what I mean. Like, I just think if there's a woman there that's like suitable for the role, by all means, but forcing it doesn't do women any favors, in my opinion. I have no idea who it should be. I think they're in a bit of trouble, because I think that it's a really important decision for RTE and for the future of RTE. But yeah, I mean, I'm still holding out for a George Hook.
Or Kevin Myers.
Or Kevin Myers.
Kevin would be great. Yeah. But actually, I think probably they're going to end up having to go with Tommy Tiernan, just moving from Saturday to Friday. Because
are you serious?
There's no other obvious candidate. There just isn't. I mean, who do you have? Dahi O'Shea? I mean, don't get me wrong. Dahi O'Shea has a fan club. I wouldn't be in it. Nothing personally against him. It's just a style thing. Yeah, I think they're in a bit of trouble, but we'll watch it with interest.
But we're subscribing to is the culture of Ireland, which is that it automatically has to come from a pool of people that we already know, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, more specifically, that it has to come within RTE, and it doesn't. I mean, there are actually other people doing good things in media. Tommy Bowe is actually doing good stuff on the morning show on Virgin Media anytime I see him, and very natural interviewer. Kieran Cuddihy on News Talk. I sometimes appear on that show, but I'm not speaking out of bias. Very natural interviewer. There are lots of people outside of RTE who might potentially get a shot at that, but let's face it, they won't.
Well, that's the problem.
Is going to be entirely an internal appointment, and they're running out of candidates. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. But anyway, I think we'll leave it there for now. I think we've talked about a lot. So have you any last thoughts before we say goodbye to the listeners this week?
No, we'll leave everyone off to go and make Coronation Chicken and Ken Hom's rack of lamb and a
Mm,
trifle.
yeah. I don't know what time it starts, but I'm having to set my alarm clock. I only have my lie-in on a Saturday, but I have to get up tomorrow. I mean,
Oh, does it start early?
I think it's like before lunchtime, which is early on a Saturday, but I think it actually starts about 9 a.m. or something like that.
I know
Um,
my kids are at football at 9 a.m. anyway, so I won't be watching it until they get back, but or until we get back. But
okay,
yeah, I'll dip in and out, sure, and we'll discuss it next week. But I'll just be watching mostly for
the
the
drama,
goss, the
the
drama.
drama.
Love the drama.
All right. Well, until next week, until there's more drama, that, my friends, was the week that really was. Thanks very much for listening, and we will talk to you in 1 week's time.